In the previous video, we've seen how we can unwrap our geometry and pack the resulting UVs, and now I want to show you how you can improve their quality in a non-destructive way. So let's start with the obvious, which is looking at the UV packing options. So you can set here what you expect the resolution you'll be baking at to be, as well as what sort of margin you want between your UV islands. You usually want something reasonable, not too small, because otherwise you get the risk that when you start mapping everything, the islands will start bleeding into each other, which is usually not great, but like what value should be, I don't really know. It's whatever is okay with you, really. Then, because unwrapping tends to take some time, like let's click on unwrap and wait until it finally completes. And oh boy, this is taking a while. Yeah, there we go. So we got some very nicely packed UVs, but it took us a while, and maybe that's not the best when we're experimenting. So I've also got some other options to go a little bit faster. Let's see how much faster it is. It's not that much faster. It's maybe twice as fast. But as you can see, those UVs are pretty atrocious. So yeah, I recommend you keep it at least to reasonable or accurate for when you're actually gonna bake, and fast is just for when you're just experimenting a bit. But if that's not enough, you can actually go in preferences, and here in UV Packer it's set to Blender by default, but there is also a plugin called UV Packer, which is really good, really fast. And if it's already installed with your Blender, you can select it here. And let's check how long it takes. It's not going to be that much faster, but it's probably going to be roughly, yeah, there we go. It's probably as fast as the low quality Blender packer. And yeah, that's some pretty nice UVs, pretty fast. So I do recommend it. Another thing that you can do is here you've got this snap option. So this is not really going to improve the quality of the packing, but it should improve maybe a little bit the sharpness of the textures once you've baked everything. Because what it does is it's going to take all the vertices and make sure that those vertices are precisely aligned with the corners of the texels. So this means that if you've got something that's maybe not entirely vertical, and because of small imprecisions in the math, like maybe this vertex is a little bit here, and that's not going to bake nicely. It's going to alias a little bit on the edge, and then yeah, that's not the best. But the problem is, if you don't have enough resolution, then you're going to have some vertices that start kind of merging onto each other. Is that worse than having vertices between pixels? I don't know. That's why I left it as an option. I think it's safe to leave it on. It's perfectly alright. Sometimes even the best laid out UVs won't give you anywhere near the amount of detail you want, even at 4K. And the only way to get more resolution is to use more textures. And that's where the UDIM system can become a lifesaver. So here you've got a list of what Substance Painter calls texture sets, and I believe in the Marmoset toolbag it's UV sets. And basically it means each UDIM becomes a whole set of textures. So basically each object in GamiFlow will be assigned to a UDIM. We can create multiple UDIMs, so let's call this one base, this one we call turret, and this one we call tracks. And we're going to try to assign all the relevant objects to the relevant UDIMs. So I'm going to take the turret, I'm going to select all the hierarchy, and then I'm going to press Shift V, and I'm going to first select the UDIM I want, which is turret, then click Set UDIM, and now all these objects will be part of the turret UDIM. I'm going to get the tracks, select the hierarchy, select tracks UDIM, click Set UDIMs, and now I'm good to go. And we can check that this worked by going here, and in UDIM we can see that it's now set to turret, which is exactly what we wanted. And now the next time we unwrap, which we will do now, we will unwrap into different UVs basically. This takes a little bit of time because of course. And now we can see that we've got the base, which is just this middle section here, which has its own UV set. We've got the turret, which has some very nice UVs here, and we've got the tracks, also nice. And this means that now in Painter we can have a lot more resolution to work with. And if you feel that maybe actually you didn't want UDIMs, but you spent the last half hour maybe assigning objects to different UDIMs, and then you don't want to lose that work, you can just click on this button, which will merge all the UDIMs. So next time you unwrap, it will unwrap everything into one UDIM, and then in the painter you'll only get one UDIM. And if you want to go back to using all the UDIMs, you can just untick it and get everything working as expected again. And here you can see the difference between those three UDIMs at 2K and then everything into the one 2K texture. And from this point of view, the difference in detailing isn't exactly staggering, which means that maybe I didn't actually need UDIMs here. And you should generally avoid having too many UDIMs if you're working in games, because each UDIM means it's a different set of textures, and that means it's a different material. And if you've got different materials, then you need to have different meshes, and that's all a lot of CPU overhead, depending on what engine you're working with. So if we go to the export mesh, oops, not this, make export, and then we look at how many objects it creates. Like we can see that here with the UDIMs it created, and one object for the tracks, one object for the base, well, I can't actually do it, yeah, and then one for the turret. But if I say, oh, ignore UDIMs and then remake the export mesh, then we're going to see that the bottom is now one big mesh. And the turret is still an individual object, because I asked it to, said do not merge with parents, because I still want to be able to animate it. But theoretically, we could have everything into one big object if we didn't want to animate it, which is slightly more optimized. So with that out of the way, I now want to talk about how we can constrain our UVs, because auto-packing everything isn't always enough. For example, all surfaces are not exactly equally important. Some of them don't need as much texel density. A good example is here in the hole, like the bottom bit, the side bits, like you barely see them. Like they're still there, and I wouldn't want to delete the faces, but I don't think they deserve that much texture space. Look at it, like they take pretty much like a good third of the entire UDIM, which I don't think is acceptable. So what we can do is select a face here, and then we come here in the, as long as you're in edit mode, you get this little menu here, and we're going to set scale at 0.5, click on scale, and now we can see we've got this green overlay that says the resolution is going to be slightly reduced. So next time, if I click on unwrap, and I show the UVs again, we can see that this is now taking a lot less space, which is quite useful, I think. Sometimes you have islands that need to be oriented in a certain way to fit whatever texture they might have. Like if you've got a nice tiling wood texture with a nice grain, you want to make sure that your objects get the grain in the right direction. Or for example, here with this cable, I've got a texture with some diagonal stripes, and I want to make sure that they actually follow the cable nicely, which means I need to know which way. I need to make sure this island is, for example, vertical. Here it's horizontal. I didn't choose that. That's just the packer that decided horizontal is best, but that's not what I want. So what I can do is select an edge here, this one, and I say I want it to be vertical. So I click here on vertical, and next time I unwrap, it will hopefully rotate the entire UV. Let's go check. And this time, yeah, look at this. It's now perfectly aligned, which is a lifesaver, because there are many things like this where I don't want to pack things manually, but I also don't trust the packer to do what's best all the time. So you might have noticed this weird checkerboard overlay here on the cable, and this is actually what I want to discuss now, which is gridification, because what we've got here is a very nice and clean like grid, but if you just use the regular unwrapping, you see that it's all a bit warped and wonky, which is not great. And this is what we did here in the previous video, and we did it manually, and it took a lot of time. But actually, you don't need to do that. You can just come here, click on grid. Done. Next time you unwrap, it will be nice and clean. I saw something here as well that I don't like. Look at this. This is pretty disgusting. I click on grid, and now I unwrap, and hopefully we get some nice UVs everywhere. So let's see. Look at that. This is it's pretty clean. And this one, also clean. So this is a huge time saver, but if you've got a plugin that does it for you, then why not just do that? But otherwise, if you're like me and you really don't want to waste any time with your UVs, just gridify it in GamiFlow. And you might have noticed that I do like clicking on that unwrap button, but every time it takes just a little bit too long and it gets a little frustrating. So I've added an option to, if you control click, it only deals with the current UDIM, which is quite nice. And if you shift click, it only does the packing and not the unwrapping itself. And you can combine both of them and do control shift, and then it's incredibly fast. Look at that. So you should now know pretty much everything there is to know about non-destructive unwrapping in GamiFlow, and you should be able to make very good use of your UV real estate to make even the tiniest details.